Good morning. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Southampton Town Board to order on this first day of June 2023. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's join together, do a brief moment of silence as we keep in our thoughts and prayers all the men and women of our armed services who bravely defend our freedoms at home and abroad each day. With them in mind, let's join together for a brief moment of silence. All right, please be seated. I'm going to ask our clerk's office, Shelley Burkowski, to read the special meeting notice and follow it with a roll call.
Special Town Board meeting Thursday, June 1st, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held both in person in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, and via video conferencing on Thursday, June 1st, 2023 at 10:30 a.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Home Rule Request Resolution in support of Assembly Bill A 7645 and Senate Bill S 7460 as it relates to the adoption and submission of an annual budget by the trustees of the freeholders and the commonalty of the town of Southampton. Home Rule Request Resolution in support of Assembly Bill A 7647 and Senate Bill S 7439 as it relates to the alienation of particular parkland for the purpose of installing an algae skimmer in Lake Agawam and replacing such alienated parkland with new dedicated parkland. Jay Snyderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Jay Snyderman.
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Present.
Councilman Martell.
Present.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
All right. Thank you, Shelley. All right, so I called this special meeting because we had two time-sensitive matters, both relating to the Assembly session, because they, New York State Senate Assembly, they break in mid-June. And if these bills were not passed, there'd be no other opportunity, I don't believe, this year in a meaningful way to pass these bills. So one of them has to do with the creation of the trustee tax line, and because we have not reached a point where we have an agreed budget or an agreed memorandum, and not being absolutely certain that we will, the only way to buy more time is through the passage of this so that we could work out something that's agreeable to both sides. The other bill has to do with the alienation of parkland. The village, and Trustee Stevenson is here. The village is seeking to put that biofilter that we had funded in part, we're not just the only source of funding for it, at Dozier Park, which is just to the east of Lake Agawam Park. And to place it, even though it's a water quality project, to place it there does require alienation, parkland alienation, and so it does require Assembly bill to do it. And if the board is amenable to allowing its placement there, then we have to do this. And there, as you guys are all familiar, there's a swap involved with that. We have to dedicate a similar size and value property as parkland. All right, so with that, let's go to public portion. And this is a hybrid meeting, so we may have people online as well, at home or in remote locations, who wish to weigh in on things. So I don't have any cards for public portion. Is there anyone, I'll just do this by show of hand, anyone wishing to be heard in public portion? All right, we'll go online. Is there anyone Charles, if you were watching this from a remote location and wish to be heard,
No, sir.
please click the raise hand icon.
There's no one on.
There's no one on. Okay, I will make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, let me read the first item on the agenda. And do we want to do this? I guess so, because it's fine, we can take them in the order here. 767 of 2023, it's a home rule request resolution in support of A7645 and S7460 as it relates to extending provisions of law relating to the adoption and submission of an annual budget by the trustees and freeholders in commonality of the town of Southampton from the applicable date of January 1, 24 to January 1, 2025. So I'll make a motion to approve. So second by Councilman Bouvier. So now we can discuss it. Let me say a few things on this. And, I regret that we're at this point where we have to buy more time. That's why we had worked so hard on a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement, so hard on a budget, literally trying to forensically determine the actual cost of the trustee operations and giving some additional wiggle room as well, so that we could set the baseline budget by which in the future the trustees would be able to use that as their baseline and then add on up to the tax cap. But we have not been able to agree on that baseline budget, and that is a bit, to me, it's relatively objective. The numbers are the numbers. You just have to figure them all out. They've never really been figured out, and that's why we hired Len Marchese to assist. He's a CPA on this. Now, I do understand that the trustees have hired an accountant. They are sitting down, and they are trying to come to terms with a baseline budget. We also, and Sean, Assistant Town Attorney Sean Cambridge, worked with us on a memorandum of agreement. It was about 30-page long document. We meticulously, as a board, went through it months ago, presented it to the trustees. The trustees have not, to my knowledge, other than to say there won't be a memorandum of agreement, or there'll be an agreement only on specific items by which we agree to either use the trustee services or they agree to use our services. But in my mind, certainly, there has to be agreement on some fundamental principles as to when their budget gets submitted, the disciplining of town employees and other things. If the trustees want to hire their own employees, when they let us know those types of things, so that we have ample time in our budgetary cycle to address those things. So we do not, and now Assemblyman Thiel, who was the sponsor of the legislation that gave us the ability, and we unanimously requested the ability to create the tax line. And I still feel very strongly that the trustees should have a tax line for two principal reasons. One is transparency, so that the voters can actually see how the elected Board of Trustees are managing their money. But more importantly, so that this board can't defund the trustees. And this has always been an issue. How can the trustees be an independent body, knowing that if they take a position that's adversarial to the town, and our interests do not always align, then we as a town board could literally take away every penny of their funding. This law prevents that. This law protects the trustees, and I'd like it to happen. And frankly, this is my last year as supervisor. I really want it to happen while I'm supervisor. But because of the delay in response, I don't know how to make it happen. Now, there are two things that could happen, assuming we pass this bill. It still has to get through Albany. If it gets through Albany, it still has to get signed by the governor. If we are able to come to terms on these fundamental things, the baseline budget and the agreement by which we operate, I will personally call the governor and ask her not to sign it. That gives us a few more weeks. Other than that, if we come to terms in a week or in a few days, that's okay too. Then we can ask Assemblyman Thiel to pull the bill, because it'll be another 10 days before this bill gets passed. So there are ways to do this. If we're not able to come to terms, then honestly, we need more time. And this bill will give us the additional time that we need so that both sides are comfortable with this. What we're doing is historic. Maybe it should have been done a long time ago. Trustees have been here for the past 300 or so years. But this is really, I think, an important step. And I'm a little bit disappointed that the clock, that we were not able to meet the deadlines that, in terms of the assembly that we need to meet to be able to move this forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to anyone else who wants to weigh in on this. But at this point, we need additional time, and we're out of time.
So I'll start. I'm really saddened that we're at this point. When I came in 3.5 years ago, I was given the task of being liaison to the trustees, and knowing everybody personally, it was something I really wanted to take hold of. And I spoke with every one of the trustees at the time about just this, and I brought it up to the board many times that this tax line was absolutely needed. And every conversation I ever had, especially with Scott or Ed, I would say, we need the budget. And I started saying that 3.5 years ago. When Cindy came in, she wanted to take over the liaison duties for the trustees. I wanted to go to Youth Bureau and get back to working with the young people. It seemed like a natural thing. She had a little bit more experience, and I passed on the same thing. I said, look, we're going forward with the tax line. We absolutely need to get a budget in place. And here we are 3.5 years later, and we still don't have that. And it saddens me that we cannot accomplish this feat at this point, because I really understand the trustees' challenges, and I absolutely want to give them a tax line, but we absolutely have to be budget neutral on what we do. We cannot increase the taxes, because you have a responsibility, we have a responsibility, and that has to do with the taxes. So we really need to agree on this budget, and we need to do it rather quickly, or Assemblyman Thiel will put this through.
Cindy, any?
You pretty much said everything.
Sure. Really, a question, Supervisor. The bill that is before the New York State Legislature, that has one change. It changes the year 24 to 25.
Yes.
And currently, the way the law is written, it's by 24, by the budget for 2024. This would just extend that to by the budget 2025. We could still have a budget in place for 2024, is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. It gives us options.
Well, look, I believe under the current Assembly bill, we set the budget for '24. The town does.
That's
It's
correct.
Every
Right.
budget
I agree.
after that. But there is some disagreement with the trustees who believe that they set the baseline budget. Now, there's never been, I don't think, a disagreement that the creation of this tax line would not place a new burden on taxpayers. We would simply take the money that we're already collecting and just show it on the tax line. So one line on the budget would go down by the exact amount that the other one went up. Now, we built some additional revenues into it because next year, the plan was for the trustees to have a new office. And there were gonna be some additional expenses associated with that. So we built that in as well. So in '25, that'll already be in the baseline budget, assuming that they're in the new offices, though I've heard some rumors that they are not interested in the new building, but that's something that we'll sort out. But we're moving ahead with renovations to that building that were requested by the trustees. So meanwhile, there's never been, to my mind, a public statement by a trustee or a town official that is contrary to this notion that the creation of this line would be tax neutral, that it would not increase taxes. And until I see a budget that, I worked very hard to create a budget that I think is fully reflective of what the trustees' operations are, includes all of their revenue sources, and figures out exactly what property tax collection has to happen in order for them to function at their current levels, not at some future level, at their current levels, and gives them the independence to make choices within their budget, move some things around, and go If they're not happy with some of our services, they can contract their own professional services to a point. But this idea that it would be tax neutral is something I think that President Horowitz and others have echoed. I can't tell you I can tell you that I believe the budget that I gave to the trustees is tax neutral. But they have not said what they don't like about it. And without that information, maybe they're going to come back and say, we're happy with the budget, we've reviewed it, it's good. If you look at the the actual 2023 budget for trustees, it's $1.1 million. But that's not truly reflective of the trustee operation. There's a lot of services that we give them that aren't shown on their line. And so I attempted to show everything, all the shared services. And the budget came to, I think, right around $2 million. Something in that range. But I'm waiting for the trustees to say what I did wrong. Or and their accountant is now going to work with our accountant and get back to us. But they're not here today. The trustees are here, but nobody is presenting information. So we're sort of out of time. That's the issue.
So this essentially would extend.
Yeah, and we cannot table this, unfortunately, because
Right.
Fred needs it done. If we tabled it, it would be for one day. Fred needs it done by the end of this week.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Scott, you want to speak as an official? You can
I
speak.
will absolutely speak for the Board of Trustees, and I think some of my fellow trustees would also like to speak.
I can't, though, in this section allow the public to speak, but I will allow official representatives to speak.
I appreciate.
President Horowitz?
I appreciate that, and I know that I've spoken to many people in the public throughout the community that are in support of the trustees and what the trustees do. Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to speak, and I'd like to thank you for the meeting that you're having today. I just want to set some records straight relative to what's going on here. And a lot of things have been said about responsibilities. Rick, I think you used the word responsibility. The trustees have a fiduciary duty, a responsibility to everybody in this town, the freeholders of commonality, to handle the trust assets, trust properties, colonial era patents predating the formation. 400 years of the country, 400 years the trustees have been struggling and have been here and are more needed today than ever before with all the pressure on our community from the upland influences and all the people that are here now. Our beautiful environment, our waterways, our shellfish stocks, our access to the beaches, and so forth. The trustees are here to protect everybody, to enjoy these things. There's been a lot said here. So let's be clear on a couple things. First of all, there's been a lot of discussion about I. We started off as a collaborative effort. People maybe want to criticize me for using the word collaboration. But I think that's how a township works, and that's how a community works, through good collaboration and communication. Now, we don't always all have to agree on what it is that we're working on, and it's good, at times we disagree, but it's how we arrive at understanding the position of the other party, that we make better decisions to serve the people that we serve in our community. We're elected officials, we're public servants. That's what our charge is. I've been here for the mission, and I've been in this building for 14 years, okay? 2 terms as a conservation board member working on wetland applications. This is my 10th year as trustee. I've been dedicated, and I've taken it very seriously, okay? I believe this is one of the most important things that we need for the framework of our town, okay? And when you say that we're out of time and the trustees haven't responded, the trustees have responded. The trustees are trying to work on these items, and we are. We've hired competent people to work with Comptroller Marchese, who we've had a terrific relationship. And yes, you did present a memorandum of agreement, but it's not acceptable, okay? It has provisions in there that 4 attorneys have looked at it and said takes the trustees back 400 years. There is a lot of history. There's the Dongan patent. There's the other battles that have been fought and won with substantial research that's been done by the appellate that cannot be disrespected. And when you use words like responsibility, our responsibility is to all the people that are the beneficiaries of the trust. And I'm here to tell you today that you're talking about 2 different deadlines. You're talking about the deadline of the session for the State Assembly, not the deadline for the law. The trustees feel quite confident that they can provide the numbers on a budget-neutral basis that's needed to provide the financial stability and the inability for tampering with the trustees politically, financially, or otherwise, so that they can continue to do the job that they were chartered to do back in the day, and it's ever so important today, okay? This is about stability. That's what the trustees need. We all agree on that. You just said that, I heard it, we all heard it. It's about transparency. It's about showing the taxpayers what expenses they are currently occurring on the general fund that they don't see in their budget. It's about putting it on that line. It's about giving assurances to the trustees and future boards, that that's going to be there for them to do their job unencumbered. This home rule and this concept and this seemingly knee-jerk type of reaction because the session's coming to an end, there should have been more effort in a we conversation than an I crafted a budget and I. We started off, Jay, you and I collaboratively. I love to work with people. That's what I do, okay? I have to respectfully disagree that you need this. I think it's a mistake, even from a common sense point of view. Let's be reasonable. The Board of Trustees right now is 5 seasoned people, deep, experienced people in our community that have been working on stewarding this through for a long period of time. Now you're talking about implementation of this. That should be done by experienced people that have been in the trenches taking this fight so that it could be done for the generations to come. You have 2 of our trustees that are aspiring to higher office. They want to join the town board at this level. You have a 3rd that's aspiring to be a county legislator. God bless them. People that want to do more and serve more, I commend that. But I'm a common sense guy. And it just makes more sense to the people of this town for this board and this board to get together, work this out, get it done within the timelines. We all know it can be done. If there's something that's unreasonable, I would think lawyers can look at that and say, yeah, we can't allow something to be done that's wrong or bad and that is going to affect the generations. I stand here today, I'll be 59 years, I've been here over half a century. I'm not here because I want to run for a different position or I want to do anything other than the mission I was put here to do for the people of this community. I have a long history in charity, in community, in family, in children. I'm here for the people. I'm here for the mission. I'm here to do the right thing. I'm asking you. I'm not here solely by myself. I move as a consensus builder with my board. My board has resolved some of the toughest battles and some of the toughest lawsuits that the trustees have had for years, over a decade. But my board, working together, have been able to resolve these things, okay? Not contentiously, not politically, but calmly and appropriately. We can resolve this. We have a golden opportunity. I've said this. We have a golden opportunity to resolve this, especially you, Supervisor Schneiderman. This would be a great thing to do now, as you pointed out. I'm here as the president of the trustees, willing to do whatever it takes, but we have to have respect. I respect you. I respect your board. I'm just asking for the same in return and an understanding for the responsibility that I have as the president of this board and representing all the beneficiaries, freeholders, and commonality of this town that has been fighting battles to defund the trustees. In my tenure, I've been here. They fought to defund the trustees. We owe it to the people. We owe it to the future generations to stop this now and fix this problem. You can't tell me, and you can't tell anybody, in my opinion, in the public, that we don't have that ability to do that. 10 elected officials with good counsel. And yes, we hired very competent people to work with Comptroller Marchese as well, to show the public this is what the expenses are, and this is how we memorialize them, And this is how we show you transparency, and this is how we keep politics and other tampering outside of the board that's in place to take care of the heart and soul of this community. So, you know, you may have your minds made up and you may have your rationale. But I respectfully disagree. And I believe we can get this done. And I think what you're saying to the public is not a good message. It's just not a good message. And I'm here to assure the public, I'm here to work with you. There's reasons in rhyme why things are taking a bit of time. My board wants to get this right. We've got one shot at this. Let's not blow it, okay? I'm going to close with this so that you can understand where I'm coming from. And
Thank you.
maybe some of my other board members would like to speak as well. We're the maritime people. We're protecting the waterways. And I will advise you, just like I would advise a boater who's speeding through a no-wake zone. You are responsible for your wake, okay? So let's be conscious of what our next moves are. Let's work together. Let's get this done now. Let's not kick this can down to 2025. It makes no common sense, okay?
All right,
Thank you for your
stay-
time.
Stay there, because there may be some
Can
questions.
we have Sean read the timeline?
Was it?
Can we have Sean read the timeline on the work that we've done?
Well, hang on a second. I want to say a word or two. You know, this is about we. It's about we the people, not just you and me and this board and your board. This is all the residents, all the taxpayers, all the trustees and commonality, the commonality here. You know, we all want to get it right. We want to get it right. We recognize the historic importance of doing it. And that's why it's a little bit frustrating that, you know, we knew this was monumental. This was going to take a while to fully understand the relationship between the town and the trustees. It's, you know, they're two separate bodies, two, you know, sovereign in many ways bodies. You know, when I used the word "I" before, I was referring to developing the budget as a chief fiscal officer of the town. And so I, supervisor, worked on trying to figure that out because I present the budget for the town. It's one of the few things that the supervisor has a certain authority to do. And so we, the town board, worked on the memorandum of agreement with Sean and went through every single line. And I had told you, and you and I met about the budget a couple times, about the whole methodology behind the budget. But in terms of the memorandum of agreement, I had said to you, this agreement will not diminish the powers of the trustees, challenge the powers of the trustees, nor will it expand the powers of the trustees. And if there is language or stipulations within that agreement, cross those out. Cross them out. There was, I don't know, like 80 or 90 provisions, 100 provisions in it. You could have circled them, redlined them, changed the words, told us what was objectionable. If, you know, we have a misunderstanding of, you know, the Gessen decision or legislative acts or the Duncan patent, educate us. Let us know what those things are. I still have this issue about the budget because I, the supervisor, have to present the budget for next year. And I will need what the trustee budget is in calculating that and calculating the town's tax cap. And in our conversations, you have said that you're giving me the budget in November. And that doesn't work. I can't do that. We have to make a decision about the tax cap prior to that. That simply does not work. And my reading of the law is that the town adopts the budget for the trustees, the first one. And then after that, like a fire district, you tell us what it is. And it is only up to the town to pierce the cap for you if your budget pierces the cap. You had said that you believed that it was there's sort of an error in the law, that the trustees are supposed to be like a fire district. The trustees are supposed to pierce the cap. That's not my reading of the law. There's a fundamental misunderstanding there. So these fundamental misunderstandings can be clear. We can clear these things up. But I am concerned. I am concerned because without this assembly bill giving us more time, in my mind, I will have to put together a budget for the first budget for the trustees, and we may not have an agreement in terms of how those funds, what the relationship between the two bodies are. And that's not good for you, all of you, the taxpayers, it's not good for the town board. I want this to happen, Scott, to my core. I really wanted this to happen while I was supervisor, and I'm saddened that it may not. There's still got to be an opportunity. If we pass this home rule message today, again, still has to get through Albany, still has to get signed by the governor. We have a couple weeks with the pressure on to make this happen. And if we don't, then we need another year. That's just the way it is.
You want to
But
respond to that?
sure.
First of all, where do I address all of this? Okay, first of all, let's not take such a defeatist attitude, Jack. Okay, let's not take such a defeatist attitude. All right, you're talking about getting your timeline for the session, and I personally never told you I would give you a budget in November. Meetings with council had conversations of what the law reads. I've been trying to get you things and be as quickly as possible. So let's put that aside, okay?
All right, you're representative.
But correct.
I stand corrected.
Correct, because the trustees decided that as dedicated as we are.
You did not disagree with that, though. When your
No,
representative made that statement,
he
you
said-
did not say that wasn't how it's going to
If
be.
you want to talk about this, there was misinformation that you were running on as well, Mr. Supervisor, because we did contact the state assemblyman in the meeting who clarified that, okay, for us, all right? And we still just tried to work past that. There was misunderstanding on the town's part, not on our council's part. But the reality is this, okay? This is counterproductive. It's, as I said at the beginning of this, it's about how you deal with disagreements or misunderstandings. It's how you deal with them that makes the determination of what happens next. So we all know this. Why? Because we had a meeting. We all know the urgency. We all know what has to be done here. So you know what? I think it's a bad message, all right, to be defeatist. I think it's a bad idea to kick this to 2025 just for common sense, to delay transparency. You know, the trustees have hired a professional that's experienced in this, that has professional respect, mutual respect, and decor with the current comptroller that's working on this. The gentlemen understand each other. They speak the same language. That's what we want. People that can look at things and come to agreements on what numbers are. So what's done is correct for the taxpayer, and is done is correct for the trust and the beneficiary of the trust. Because just like you said, I've been saying the whole time I've been standing here, it's about us. It's about the beneficiaries. This is a hasty decision to take advantage of the session ending. I think it's a bad move for us locally, people that expect us to work together and get this done. There's no reason why we can't get this done. And so that the numbers are there for the chief financial budget officer to submit those numbers and do what he has to do. And that's what I'm hearing from the professionals we've hired. Okay? I had conversation with Comptroller Mark Casey and the gentleman that we've hired as well. And everybody feels that they can work this out.
What
And
about
instead of
the memorandum of agreement? What about
well, the
that?
memorandum of agreement is about, I guess, Mr. Cambridge here having a conversation with our firm and agreeing on what makes sense on the shared services that are not going to create problems for the trustees. I don't think that I would hope that nobody intended to take certain controls away from the trustees or decision-making. I, as the president, certainly don't. I build consensus and I keep the train on the track of what the trustees have decided. They're well within agreement to work with you on that memorandum of agreement. I've had these conversations with them. You know, I think that we all know that the document, and let's be frank, that there were objectionable things in that document. You and I both know that.
But you haven't told me what they are.
The whole document needs to be reworked, is what he was trying to say. We will sign. He sat in that room. I was there. He said we will sign memorandum of agreement where we are working together with the town, but we can't sign that agreement. So that says let's just start over. Let's work together and start over, okay? We don't want to hurt things that are going to affect us in future lawsuits where we are representing things that are needed traditionally and historically for our community. I
Good.
don't think it's a good idea to take such a defeatist attitude.
We agree
right now.
that,
We're
that
agreed.
it needs
We're
to
all in
start
agreement.
over. That you've been in existence for 337 years, and we're saying perhaps another year may be necessary to hammer
right.
out
I
such,
don't-
please, to such an important agreement that is going to move forward in history. I mean, you're saying that we can do this in 12 weeks? Well, we've had a year, and,
Several
you know,
years.
seven-
I would like for,
Several,
I would
3
like for
years.
Sean to read the timeline of what we've
right.
done.
And so, I appreciate, like, let's not be hasty on this, but, you know, and putting this budget out is really the main goal, not getting it done in a way
Listen,
that
And
we're going to have to.
I want to
okay.
add one thing here, and to
No,
the
that's- I was
councilman's
done.
point, is that this doesn't end it, this just prolongs it, because we have not been able to negotiate with you guys on a suitable, on both sides. Everybody here, this is a really weird situation, because everybody here wants the same thing. We want the tax line, absolutely we do. That's what we've been working for years and years and years, not just a few moments in the past, in the last few months. We had to have an MOU or a form of that. That's part in the statute. We can't avoid that. If we did that, we would be committing essentially a crime. We have to have an agreement signed with you guys. What's so hard about that? That's what I don't understand.
There's nothing that's hard about that, Councilman.
But except, Scott, it's been a long, long time. We sent it to you guys. You haven't come back and responded to us as to what changed. That's what a negotiation is. That's how it works. But it's impossible for one side to negotiate if we don't know what's bothering the other side.
With all due respect, okay, I came in good faith to pick up the financial documents. My board knows that. I was sent there in good faith, and you know what I left with? No financial documents. Yes,
When?
When was,
in March.
Sean,
okay?
could you
So-
please read the
let's-
timeline? Because,
Listen, this is counterproductive.
no, this is making it
No,
sound
this
like
is
we've done
productive.
nothing, and I would
Meeting.
like
No
for
one- no
council
one
to
is-
read
no one
what
is
we've
saying-
done.
You're trying to lay it on
No,
on
no,
our
no, no, no,
feed.
no. No one
And
is
we
saying.
have a very
no, no, no.
accurate timeline of everything
No.
we did to
Listen,
progress
so do
this.
we. No
So,
one
well, so
has-
here's the problem. We're gonna read the timeline and what's been done to date. And you're telling us now, with all the work that we've done to date, with nothing going forward, that we're supposed to agree that in 12 weeks, we're gonna agree on everything and be
We-
ready to go.
Listen,
I would like for Attorney Cambridge to
Okay,
read
that's fine, and
the timeline.
and I'll respond to what that is.
Okay.
Okay, so the MOA was drafted at the request, we had a public work session with Assemblyman Thiel, and it was discussed, a contract to control everything in this relationship. On our last meeting, Council for the Trustees had suggested doing separate IMAs for each service. I think that's fair to say in a statement. Our timeline of working on this so far, this was initiated 3/7 of 2019. The trustees had withdrawn support for tax line. Actually, while I was attorney assigned to the trustees, we worked together to get this passed. Trustee Resolution 2021-176, support for the tax line, that passed September 1st, 2021. From there, we worked to coordinate with the town board. The town board passed a Home Rule Resolution 2022-534. That was 5/10 of 2022. So this has been a pretty lengthy process. From there, meetings had started, and we have a timeline running right up until draft MOA agreement was circulated to the trustees board in full, February 8th of 2023. Schedule A, which is the financial agreement, was requested 2/14 of 2023. That document was released in final form 3/6 of 2023. From there, there was a collaborative draft sent around 4/2/2023, and then a follow-up 4/3 of 2023. We've requested a red line from council at Be Ready. We did take a meeting with council at Be Ready 5/17/2023. In which council said that the agreement was not acceptable, and they'd like to parse out separate IMA agreements for all services.
Okay, so that's a fair timeline. The trustees hired counsel, and the trustees hired folks to work on the financial aspects of this. There's plenty of time to get this done, okay? It took a long time to get it through the Assembly and the Senate, and a long time for the governor to sign it. It doesn't get signed immediately. It takes time. This is counterproductive. We should be working together to get this done. It could absolutely be done, okay? And agreements are understandings. A memorandum of an agreement or a memorandum of an understanding, it's got to work for both sides. I don't want to step on your toes. It shouldn't be wanting to step on the trustees' toes. There have been some difficulties that need to be ironed out, and we can iron them out. This is just looking like it's pushing it down to 2025 to a different board. The implementation side doesn't have the same level of experience to get that done. And to not take advantage of the deep experience and institutional knowledge of the trustee board that's in place that have been fighting for years to get this, okay? Trustee Warner, myself, Trustee Pell, okay? We've been working on this for a very long time. Trustee Welker, very dedicated, and Trustee Parrish as well, are all here, have all came here with support for myself to advise you that this is not needed. This is not appreciated. This is more defeatist than collaborative, okay? No one's saying that you didn't do anything. What we're saying is this board had people doing substantial research so that we could assure the beneficiaries and freeholders and commonality of this town that any agreement that's signed, since this is so historic, is not going to do harm. And it was determined by everyone that it would do harm, and it was contrary. And that's not what we want to do. So now that we know that, I think what makes the most sense is to let Mr. Marchese and Mr. Olivio do their job, let them work through those numbers, let Mr. Cambridge work with Mr. Martier, let them come to an understanding of what makes sense, and get this done now, okay? You are putting this community in harm's way. You don't have any guarantee of what the future board will
Oh, my
do.
God.
I have
Without a
no,
delay, I am forced to give you your budget.
I have no assurances that a future board will not try to kill this legislation entirely. And I think that's too big a risk to take from someone that's sitting as the president of the trustees.
You know what's funny?
Prove me
In
wrong.
2019, the town board in 2019, I believe you were on that board, said that they would go ahead with with the trustee tax line because they felt it was an important thing. And if memory serves me correct, I remember watching a meeting where a trustee pulled support because he accused the trustees at the time of backroom deals. So 2019, this could have been done. It got pulled by the trustees. So now we're trying to do the right thing and we're working towards a solution. And all we're trying to do with this is basically say if we can't get there, we are not breaking the law because we have a legal responsibility to follow the laws.
That's correct. And that's what our council was pointing out relative to what the laws were pertaining to. Now, laws are always subject to interpretation. So everyone,
Could you
listen.
explain that? Because I didn't understand what you
Well,
just said.
the reality
And
was. is
let's try to take it down.
Yeah, okay, well, there was some misunderstanding in terms of how the budget presentation process was supposed to go. The town board felt it was supposed to be done by that group and present, like, this is it, we're setting the first budget. And our council felt that it was supposed to be more of a collaborative effort where we set the first budget collaboratively. And when we contacted the assemblyman, there seemed to be some misunderstanding. Okay, we were in that meeting. The town seemed to have misunderstood that point, that it wasn't only set by the town, but had to have a component coming in from the trustees. So council acknowledged, he made that point, our council made that point. Well, that's fine. Nobody's looking to drive any of these points home. All we're looking to do is work with you so that it is a collaborative effort and a collaborative budget. But that's not how it came at.
You're talking about the baseline budget.
Correct.
The budget that you were given that you
When
never responded
When
to.
you called the assemblyman.
The
okay?
baseline budget.
Right, when you called the assemblyman. Look, we can go back and forth, and again, this is what I'm talking about, in counterproductivity. You say, okay, you have some differences of opinion, but these have come to the surface as a result of that last meeting with Be Ready. And subsequently, they have set meeting times and dates, and the trustees have expended capital to get this right. So now you have to give that a chance, okay? And if you're gonna give that a
I
chance.
respectfully disagree. First of all, the memorandum of agreement is not going to be 10 memorandums of agreements. There has to be one memorandum of agreement. Your lawyer is saying, well, we're going to have an agreement for each shared service. There has to be an overarching agreement about how the two bodies work together. You have said this, I have said this, And now that seems to be off the table from your side. And
no,
I'm
no,
telling
no,
you,
no, no, no.
that is a deal breaker for me, and I think for our side.
Respectfully,
We-
that's not off the table, and respectfully,
All right,
when a board is
we're talking
represented-
about one agreement, one memorandum of agreement that deals with when we share services, how we deal with town employees,
Like-
when the budget comes in, so we know that midway through the year, you can't say, you know what, we're not gonna use your environmental analyst, we're not gonna use your secretarial or accounting services, but we're gonna keep the money we've got, so we can hire our own, and then suddenly now the town has to figure out what we're gonna do with these employees. Are we gonna lay them off? Are we gonna try to put them somewhere else? They won't have the money to move them, that kind of thing. That
Respectfully,
doesn't-
that-
And I want, Scott, I want to say one more thing,
Go ahead.
and why this is in your interest. Why this is in your interest to buy us more time. And if we can get it worked out, that's fine, the governor doesn't need to sign it. But if we don't have the additional year, and we're not able to sort this out, we're not able to come to a memorandum agreement. Now, I've got the Albany legislation that says that there will be a tax line next year. I believe under the law, I have to present my budget to the town board. And do so without the existence of this memorandum of agreement. That puts us in a very difficult position, and I will present my budget, and you will argue, you don't get to present that budget, we do. The trustees get to present that budget. I say, that's not what the law says. And you know what happens when we have a difference of agreement, difference of opinion about law? That's not gonna be a situation, that's gonna put the trustees in the town at odds, and we're gonna end up, I hate to say it, in court as to who gets to set the budget, and that is not where we want to be. I want this to be collaborative. I don't want this to go down that road. And the only way to get that is to buy more time so we can actually work out an agreement and we can work out a budget. This is in your interest, this delay. And in my opinion, a large part of the delay is because we haven't got the responses back. And the responses that we have gotten back are counterproductive. There'll be no memorandum of agreement, no global, the town doesn't get to pierce the cap, the trustees do. We'll submit our budget in November, after your budget is done. I don't know what the heck to do with that information, other than to say, I need more time.
I think
We need more time.
Well, listen, that's not totally fair, and quite frankly.
Well, tell me why, Scott.
The trustees are represented by council, council's not here for the trustees, and council should respond relative to what they have to do. I've been saying all along, it should be a collaborative effort, and that's what I came here to do. Now, you said that if we get this done, because you have your mind made up, okay? You have your mind made up.
Wait,
won't-
no one has their mind made up. We're all trying to seek the same goal here. And if we can spend all day going back and forth like this, we have a duty. You started your conversation out with having a fiduciary
That's right.
responsibility. We do too, to the entire taxpayers of the town of Southampton. We would put ourselves in jeopardy if we don't have an agreement with you that is clearly stated in the statute. I don't understand why this has to be rancorous at all.
Okay.
And I think a misunderstanding is these two boards can still work collaboratively. We can still figure out the memorandum of agreement and the budget, and it can be ready to go for next year. Done.
Look, we believe this needs to be done this year, okay? We were told this was gonna be done this year, this board has worked hard, we believe we can meet that deadline to have this done this year. You're entitled to your concerns, my board is entitled to their concerns, your council has its concerns. At the end of the day, we're trying to serve the same group of people, and I think we're being quite defeatist. We're on June 1 today. and you
I
have
don't think
people-
we're being defeatist at all, Scott.
I
I think
feel-
we're trying to work with
maybe
you,
not
and
yourself,
we're
John.
not getting, we need certain things from you guys. That's it. It's very simple.
Okay, so as we're sitting here, is Mr. Marchese, have you had a conversation with him to say he's having me? Yes. Those gentlemen are working through that, and I know that you're gonna be working.
And I asked them to be here today, they couldn't be here.
Okay, that's fine, as long as they're doing what their jobs are and they're communicating with us and with each other to get this done in the best interest of the taxpayer.
And I might add vice versa.
There's no clear sense, though, that they will be able to come up with a mutually agreed upon budget.
We can say this about anything. There has to be something called good faith, Jay. And this is a good faith effort that we're making here. You can, roll
Good
your
faith,
eyes.
Scott, I mean, I'm supporting this home rule message. I'm supporting this home rule message, and nothing you have said has made me feel like I should not support it. If anything, it strengthened my resolve and support for it, because, you haven't made it clear about the relationship between the two bodies and how we're going to work together. There's clearly differences of opinion, and I don't know how long it's going to take to sort those out. I hope we can sort them out. I'm confident that we'll be able to sort them out, but I want to give both bodies enough time to sort them out and do it right for the taxpayer, because we have a fiduciary responsibility. And we have said this is not going to cost the taxpayer more. And some of the things that, in our conversations, I understand the trustees want the greatest degree of independence. But if there is replication or duplication of services, you're not going to get cost efficiencies out of those things. And there will be tax impacts. And it goes contrary to what the fundamental understanding that we have about this new tax line being neutral to the taxpayers. And until I see your numbers, I can't tell you
Okay,
that it's
so-
neutral.
Right, so the reality in the situation is nobody has discussed, and I've never said to you, we want to have duplication of services. I've had conversations with you about having memorandums of agreement that work for the taxpayer, units that have been working, that we can work agreements out, whether it's plover monitoring or whether it's marine maintenance, okay? People that work together and do a good job that need to have agreements between the town and the trustees so that people can efficiently work. So respectfully, we need to continue having conversations like this so that we can resolve these issues, okay?
Agreed.
That we agree with.
And it can be done. It has been done. It's just, you're in this point in time where you're in the flight and they're taking your soda away and you're in the turbulence, but believe me, you'll be landing and it'll be fine, okay? We got to get through this period of time. Look, you have your, maybe you're not, don't, Mr. Bouvier, so, but I think
I don't
think
get
that-
what you just said.
Yeah, maybe you
I'm
don't.
working on the metaphor.
Yeah.
Go on.
You're still not seeing the potential that if we don't have this additional time,
I see,
how things will unfold over the course of the rest of this year.
I see more risk
And
for
I
the
see
trustees.
it leading to unfortunately, a great division between the trustees and the town, which I'm trying to avoid
Well,
by buying more
Okay,
time.
all right, so let's just stay with that for a second, okay? So this tax line was not anything new idea that we dreamed up in the last few years. This was something that was in an agreement that started with a dispute between the town board and the trustees back in the 90s. It was in that court-ordered stipulation of settlement that said there needs to be this transparency on the tax bill. This needed to be settled then. So to be fair to Supervisor Schneiderman and myself, this should have been handled by boards long, long ago, so that at this point in time in our careers, we shouldn't be wrangling with this at this point in time. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
It is. So the reality is there were disagreements in the past that ended up being before the judge, and the judge said, hey, you guys got to go out in the hall and you need to settle this. And they did. And all I'm trying to do is get respect for not having the same argument all over again, to learn from history, okay? We're trying to preserve history. We're trying to learn from history. Whatever led up to the creation of the stipulation of settlement document, we need to avoid. And that means we communicate, we acknowledge there were issues, and we get past those issues. That's what I'm here for, to try and
We're
work
trying
with
to
you on it.
lay the foundation, the framework for the next 400 years or 337 years is what we're trying to do. We're writing the charter, basically, and it's turning out to be more complicated, I guess. than
I
we
think
thought.
I think we're making it harder than it has to be. I think you have a team of 5 elected trustees that are heavily dedicated to getting this thing done and have been dedicated to this community for a long time. I think they owe that respect. I come here representing my board as the president. They requested me to represent them. I build consensus. As I said, we have settled and solved some of the toughest situations that the trustees have faced for a long period of time, and we did it professionally and appropriately. And we're going to do it again with this. I'm just asking for your support, your collaboration. I respect, what it is that you're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay? But I'm here to tell you that I don't think this should be finger pointing. I don't think it should be defeatist. I think it should be, we owe it to the citizens of our community to get this done and to get it done right, and to have respect for the fact that there will be other people in these seats 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, okay? I don't agree with the kicking the can down the road.
And if we
Do
can
what
get
you
it
gotta
done,
do.
if we can
I-
figure
I-
out how to get it done in the next couple of weeks, I will
if-
personally call the governor and ask her not to
Okay,
sign
so
it.
do I have, can I poll your board? Because you're one person.
You're gonna
Will
hear
you-
our
You're gonna
poll in a
hear
moment.
Will you-
our poll.
I know
when
that,
it
but will
goes
you,
up for
if it
vote.
gets done, will you, if we get that done between us, will you be supportive of Supervisor Schneiderman in making that phone call? Before I sign the
Sure.
letter,
Of course.
I get a
Of course.
resolution.
Sure.
Scott,
we
we're
wanna get
still
this
all
done,
trying
Scott.
to work to the same thing.
Okay.
So
We're just
of
building in a
course we
safety
would.
net.
You know, this is what really is astounding to me, because everybody in this room wants the same thing.
Part of me
And-
was
and
hoping
this-
we'd get
this-
there today, that somehow that you guys would work everything out by
Yeah,
today,
Jay.
but it's unreasonable. You need more time.
You have gentlemen that have meetings and they're working on it.
I know.
You gotta be fair.
I
okay?
understand.
You gotta give these folks time. Sean can meet with Mr. Martier.
We
and
agree.
do that.
We have to give these folks time.
That-
You just said
And
it.
that's what this is.
Thank
Okay, so I have your words.
Yes,
Okay. Feel
everybody.
better.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
President.
much.
Well, let's clarify what the word is. I support this, and I'm going to vote for it, because you need more time. And if you come to an agreement prior to that point where there's an opportunity for the supervisor to sign, then I'm all for him or asking the governor not to sign.
Thank you for your
That's where we're at.
Thank you for your clarification.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anyone else? Tough act to follow. Trustee Warner, former trustee president.
You have 3 hours.
I'm sure you'd rather be out there on the water
I
today.
was just wanting to get my head clear, so. Supervisor Snyderman, Councilman Scavone, Bouvier, and Martel, and Councilwoman McNamara. Basically, I understand what you're doing. You're protecting your board, we're protecting our board. I was to a meeting with a past supervisor that told us that we were gonna be defended, myself and then President Schultz. And we were gonna get $10. That was our funding for the year for the trustees. You know, and I can go back in history with my father and the supervisor then, I believe it was Mr. Thiel at the time. There's been, you know, at the whim of the town board, the trustees would either be favorable or not favorable. It's time for us to get a divorce, church and state. We're going to separate, and we're going to do the best we can for the people that we represent, the same people that you represent. So, I mean, I don't think we're going to need this extension. I understand why you want it, because you want to cover your backs, and hopefully we can move forward in a very quick fashion to get this done. We don't have the numbers in front of us right now, but we have our CPA working with Mr. Marchese. They worked together when they were, like I said, Garden City up west, so they're familiar with each other. So I think we have a good team. Be Ready is a very good group of individuals that have done a lot of research, brought some information to our board, and I believe to your board that would, you know, help, you know, a better understanding of this separation as we go through it. So I'm looking forward to this. Whether you guys need it or not, it's up to you. I'm just hoping that if we don't need this, and you can call up the governor and say, we've solved this, we got the numbers, we got the budget. Mr. Cambridge works with Mr. Martier, gets some memorandum of agreement, or however you want to put this document together, because I understand that shared resources is going to be an extremely important component of this whole process, because our marine maintenance guys don't work all the time, and we could share them with the Bay Constables. And as far as our office and our staffing, you touched on it, getting rid of our environmental analyst and getting rid of our secretarial help. One thing with the trustees, it takes years to acquire the knowledge on each one of those positions. So we're not getting rid of those people. We're going to hold on to them, and we're going to work with you, and hopefully this will work out fine. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't disagree with anything you said. You know, it's complicated in a way differently. You know, we have a village trustee here, and, you know, villages are recognized by New York State as separate municipal governments, and they have tax authority, and they make all their decisions. You know, the trustees that predate the town as a governing body have a more complicated relationship with the town, and getting this right, it's gonna take some time, because the trustees have not, at least yet, been giving taxable authority by the state. And until such time, there's gonna have to be a partnership here, whether we like it or not. So we can be independent, but we also are conjoined like twins or something. You know, we're gonna have to deal with that fact that there's an overlap there that may not exist with the village government. So, all right. With that, is there anyone else who wanted to be heard? All right, so we had a motion and a second to approve, and being that there's no further discussion, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It is unanimous. And again, Scott, we're going to work like hell to try to get this done in the next 2 weeks, and if we can, I will make that call.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, the next resolution, 768 of 2023, Home Rule Request Resolution in support of Senate Bill A7647, S7439, as it relates to authorizing the town of Southampton to alienate certain parkland property known as Dosher Park for the purposes of installing an algae skimmer to replace such alienated parkland with new dedicated parkland. And
I'll second that.
seconded by Councilman Schiavone. We do have trustee Stevenson. I explained this a little bit earlier. You know, we had provided a significant grant for an algae skimmer. I want to say in excess of $4 million or something. The village has determined that they believe the best location is on a park adjoining Lake Agawam Park, with the Dosher property. The Dosher property through the years has had different proposed uses, from additional playground facilities to open grasses, fields and things like that. Dedicating, I believe, is this a portion of the Dosher Park or is it the entire thing? Yeah, I think it's the entirety of
I think it's the
Dosher Park.
That's a portion.
1.5 acres roughly.
Is
Use
that,
of a portion of the community.
is it a portion of Dosher Park? The whole thing, it's 1.5 acres. I don't know how big that property is.
Well, it identifies it as Dosher Park with location and tax map number, county tax.
Yeah, so it's the entirety of Dosher Park. And then we're,
Skimmer is a machine, which
Yeah.
is not gonna take up the whole
Right.
park.
well, I got, Roy, if you're gonna speak, I gotta bring you over to the podium here. So I think this does alienate the entirety of Dozier Park for water quality purposes. And interestingly enough, the swap here is for 4.8 acre parcels, a bigger property, but we haven't purchased the other property yet. I believe this is
We haven't even had the public hearing.
we haven't had a public hearing on this, so this is contingent, so on the acquisition, and trustee Stevens, as you know that, our acquisition of the other piece has multiple contingencies on it. The dedication of the parcel adjoining it as part of the park, which is privately owned, I guess would probably be donated or sold to a not-for-profit. We also are looking to expand Lake Agawam Park in terms of the waterfront, so we would like this piece that we're acquiring to be ultimately have full access to the waterfront. So there are some other contingencies in terms of parking, et cetera. So passing this home rule message will enable the alienation, but it will not happen unless those other pieces are fulfilled. I just want to make sure that
Yes,
that's
Mr.
clear.
Super, I understand that. You know, governing bodies are are fluid, but I can assure you at this point in time, the board of the village is committed to the establishment of the park overlooking the pond, of the enlargement of Agawam Park, of utilization of Agawam for water resources. I've spoken to each member of the board, and they all support that and what is required to get that done as far as what you've outlined the town would like to see the village do in order to meet the contingencies you've set.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Sure.
With this alienation, I know the village was potentially looking at other pieces in the village for an STP that would also require alienation. How would we handle that if we're using this piece for that? I mean,
Well, I don't think Dozier's being looked at for sewage.
not
treatment.
Dozier, other properties.
If it is, that would be new to me, so that, we'd have to cross that bridge when we got there. If they identify another property, it may not have to be an alien, it wouldn't be by us, likely, it would be by the village itself. This
Even if
is-
it was a
this we
CPF
own.
piece.
Oh, a CPF piece?
Mhm.
Well, it
Then
would
we'd
have to
go
have,
through a separate resolution
Right.
on
Yeah.
that.
But I mean, that's what I mean, if we're swapping out this piece of parkland, that's potentially the same size as a piece that would be needed for an STP. You know what I mean, we're swapping it out for a piece that's 1 acre versus swapping it out for potentially something that's
So
4
let's
acres
say
that could be
in
used
this
for an
hypothetical
STP.
example,
Yeah.
if another CPF property is identified as a suitable site for sewage treatment, we will have to get yet another property identified as the swap parcel.
But that's what I mean, does it make sense to swap a 1 acre piece
Oh,
for
for
a
a
4 acre piece? I'm just, I don't want us to go forward with something and then go back
No,
and go,
it's-
hey,
it's a good
we need a
point,
4 acre
because
piece for an STP, we
my
just
underst-
gave up a 1
Yeah.
acre piece.
Well, it
No,
also
and
depends
hold
on
on, John, my understanding with these alienation bills is the swap piece cannot be really smaller or of lesser value, both economically or environmentally. So it's an interesting point. Are we swapping out too big of a piece, and then when we get to the other one, we won't be able to find a piece to swap?
and there's also a restriction on CPF purchases, right? For if that parcel was bought as parkland, it could not be suitable for a lot of uses, STP being one of them.
Yeah.
So.
I just don't want to see,
In the time since we've been back to the drawing board looking for another site for the location of the clean water infrastructure, I believe the CPF site that you're referring to has been examined and been determined that without additional acquisition of private properties, it doesn't meet the physical size requirement. So it would be quite complicated
okay.
to use that piece that I think you're referring to.
Yeah, and I don't know which piece you're referring to.
There was a couple that we were looking at, and the one I think that we're referring to has been kind of, we've moved on from that, so I don't think.
But this is contingent on working those things out.
Yeah, it was just a question that I wanted to ask because I just
I
didn't
think
want
it's
us
a
to
good
find
point.
ourselves in a spot where there was
No,
a
no,
4 acre
no,
piece
right,
that we
it's a
could use in a
reasonable-
4 acre piece.
No, it's a
reasonable
very
question
good,
to
Using
ask.
up
it's
your
a very
bullpen
good point,
before it's
I
needed,
think.
yeah, no, yeah.
Jim, does the parcel have to be within the village to swap that, or can it be outside the village?
Typically, it
If the
should be,
village
it should be
identifies something
near.
as CPF property and we
I
want to
mean,
replace it
ideally, you should be, ideally, you
Vicinity.
would want it in the village.
with the school
Certainly, in the
district.
but it probably, as long as it's within the town, it probably would be a, appropriate swap piece, but ideally, you'd want to try to have it in the village.
I know one swap we did, well, we didn't finish it, but it did get through Albany. The swap piece was, I think, at least a mile away, but it was a bigger piece. This is
Yeah,
one
we
in
did
Hampton
one a few
Bays.
years ago, where, I know that we did one over in Hampton Bays.
The Balkheimer property is the one I'm
Mhm.
thinking of, a
Yeah.
switch with the one next to the diner.
Yep,
But that was never finished. Went
Right.
through Albany, but
yeah. And
that
that,
would
again, that
required
was,
a ballot referendum. This, I don't believe, requires a public referendum because it's a water quality use. In Albany has to approve it.
Okay, I just wanted to.
no, it's a good question.
No, it's a really good point. I
Yeah.
don't really, this was, I think, identified because it was so close.
I just don't know where you're gonna find another 4 acre piece in the village to,
The property that we were formerly looking at might be, the Bowers Lane property might be acquired with CPF funds and have that be the swap with the one that you were referring to. They're approximately the same size. And I know the residents around Bowers Lane would love that.
Yeah.
They would.
As parkland, not as park.
Yes.
They would.
No, that's a good point.
I would support that, but.
And that would be kind of an interesting twist, because then the Bowers Lane property would be critical to creating the sewer district.
But
although
as a
not-
preservation
Not where
piece.
the
But
sewer-
only as in the swap, right, the alienation swap. But it would play a critical role, even though it wouldn't be the site of a sewage treatment facility. All right, I don't really, we have the bill that's in front of us that does have, as you point out, a swap parcel significantly larger than Dosher Park. It's significantly expensive too, I believe. And also, I mentioned those contingencies before, and I think Cindy was alluding to this too. It also has to go through public hearing to acquire that piece. And then the board has to have a resolution. So there's a number of steps that will have to happen before you can actually place your biofilter onto this property.
Well, I can simply say that those properties that overlooked Lake Agawam on Pond Lane, were this not to be done, would be in all likelihood converted to private houses. And the fact that these could be turned into a public resource, possibly the most magnificent park in the East End, would be transformational, certainly for the village of Southampton. So I really hope we can get this done.
Well, I, for one, want to help see that happen.
I have to say, I'm hopeful that this biofilter does, I understand dredging of Lake Agawam is cost prohibitive and has its own set of difficulties, although it may be the best way to clean Lake Agawam by removing those sediments. I am hopeful that this technology has a significant role, significant effect in improving the water quality of Lake Agawam.
It has a great deal of promise to clean the water. It won't solve the problem. The water is going to keep getting dirty, but it will
removes
clean it.
the
Yes.
symptom.
Yes.
It removes the symptom, but not the root cause of the illness.
Correct.
And we have to reduce the amount of nitrogen getting into the bay. But this will clear the water and,
It's an algae skimmer, right?
Correct. The
So we're
water
looking
gets
to-
filtered through the machine. The machine takes out the algae. Every now and again, you have to remove the solids. The machine doesn't have to be running 365 days a year, all the time. And the mayor has suggested that possibly other municipalities, we could lease the machine to them to use for their water quality. So there's potential.
Yeah, well, I think the
Well-
town actually owns that, but in the long run, we've never worked that one out, so.
I'm not
I think that
we
is our
might share
understanding,
the-
and that's why I'm so hopeful this works, is because I see this having potential for Mill Pond, Mill Creek, lots, Sag Pond,
All our fresh
maybe
water.
Mecox. There are, if it works, this could sort of pave the road. And no, it doesn't solve the nitrogen problem, but it does solve the algae problem. And the algae not only block light from, bottom plants, but as algae decomposes, it also pulls oxygen out of the water column. And some of the algae is toxic to fish, to dogs and humans. And
Changes the
so,
pH.
it doesn't solve the root cause of the problem. And we're working on that as well. And we just mentioned a moment ago with sewage treatment, that addresses the root cause,
Yes.
right? So,
Well, some of it. Not all
Well,
of
and
it.
even that will take, there's water in progress already from wherever it started towards the lake, that even if we were to put a sewer in today, you've got several years of that effluent still reaching the
And I
lake.
do want to, just want to, on John's point, to sort of clarify the record on this biofilter, you know, if the village, I don't know if the village will have the ability to lease it out and charge for it, because this is paid for through CPF monies, and I think the town's position is, when you're done with Lake Agawam, that piece of equipment goes to us. But we can sort that out.
I'm not an expert on that. I know a little bit about it, but
Right.
just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, so we have to be careful, because the public funds that are paying for that machine, you know, any profit derived, and this happens all the time when we, you know, pay, let's say, to dredge Mecox with environmental funds. You know, if that sand gets sold, it goes back to the CPF, the money goes back to CPF funds, because it was a byproduct of the grant. And, you know, we're very protective, as we should be, of those public monies.
Right.
And,
Understood.
if we're buying a $4 million piece of equipment, when it's done, we don't want to see that sold and then the money ending up somewhere else, so.
Understood.
Or rented and the money ending up somewhere else. So we'll work together collaboratively on it. That's the spirit of the morning. Today's word is collaboration.
Collaboration.
We. All right, anything else for trustee Stevenson?
Oh, thank you.
All right, yeah, Roy, you can have a seat. Any other discussion on the bill? I think Councilman Scavone was the second, so I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed, abstentions, it's approved unanimously. Okay, is there any other business? That's the last resolution. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Okay, let's take a minute and then we'll start our work.